Hey darlings, welcome back to my channel. Thank you very much for being here. If you are new to my channel, you're very much welcome. Please subscribe and put on your notification bell so that whenever I post a new video, you don't miss it. So in today's video, I'll be sharing with you guys some pattern modification I did to achieve this neckline and sleeve. I made this with a lining fabric, which means a muslin fabric. It's still a test run pattern. And I want to share with you guys the whole process that I took to achieve this, and I hope you guys will enjoy it. Now, after making it on a muslin fabric, I think I like the way it is, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut my fashion fabric with the same pattern. A wise fashion designer told me one time that it's always better to test every pattern on a muslin fabric before cutting it on a fashion fabric, so I expect you guys to do the same. Now the first thing I did, because I wanted a contour for the front piece, I'm going to be using a princess dart pattern for the front piece, and for the back piece I'm just going to use a basic bodice pattern. And as you can observe, at the shoulder line there's no neckline marked into it, no shoulder slant, because that's where most of the modification will take place. Also know that when you're conversant with marking this pattern, you can always mark it straight on your fabric. So first, we're just going to go over with modifying the front piece right here. Now the first thing I did was to identify the midpoint of my front pattern, and I'm just going to take it in and rule a line downwards like this. After identifying the midpoint of this front bodice, the next thing I did was to label right and left on my fabric in order to avoid confusion when modifying this pattern. Now, as you can see, I've marked in the midpoint, and I've also labeled right side of the front piece and the left side of the front piece. Now at the right side is where we'll have a shoulder, while the left side will be an off shoulder. Then the next thing I'm going to do right now is to measure in from the midpoint of this pattern 3.5 inches at the shoulder line, and I'm going to mark it right there. Now after marking it, as you can see right there, the next thing is to consider the depth, which I'm marking at 3 inches for now. So I'm going to mark 3 inches measuring from the shoulder line down, as you can see it right there. Now to determine the depth of the neckline, I'm just going to measure from that shoulder area down 5.5 inches, and I'm going to mark it right there. So guys, if you're yet to subscribe to my channel, please click that subscribe button below and give this video a big thumbs up. Also let me know what you think about this tutorial on the comment section below. Now the next thing I did was to mark 1/2 inch from this point right here towards the left side of the front piece. And after I marked it, the next thing I did was to come up here and measure 1/2 inch right here above the neck depth I marked previously, like this. Now it's time to curve in the neckline area, especially from this area downwards, and I'm going to show you how I shape this. So the first mark I made was I shaped from this point shoulder area to the first one I did, then I now smoothened it up towards this area to create a spike at this point. You can always modify this area to your taste, whether you have to leave it to the 3 inches you marked before or you're going to give it a spike. It's all up to you. So after doing that, the next thing I did was to connect this point to this point. Now after doing this, the next thing I did after connecting this point right here is to create the shoulder slant, and I'm just going to measure 3/4 inch, and I'm going to connect it to the shoulder area. As you can see now, I've done that already, and the next thing I'm going to do now is to measure at this point 3.5 inches down, and I'm going to mark it right there. Now after doing that, as you can see right now, I'm going to measure 1/2 inch from the armhole into the pattern like this, and I'm just going to mark it right there. Now I've done that already, and also at this point also I'm just going to measure in 1/2 inch as well, and I'm going to connect both to each other like this. So now the next thing I'm going to do now is to connect the neckline area from this point to this point. As you can see, I've done this already. I've done the whole connection, as you can see right here. So the next thing I'm going to work on is this part of the bodice, which is to measure 1/2 inch in from the armhole area and mark it right there. And as you can see, I've marked that already, and I'm going to smoothly connect it into the armhole right there. As soon as you've done this, the modification is almost complete, and the front piece modification is complete. So before I cut these areas off, I'm going to cut these areas off right here. The first thing I'm going to do before cutting this off is to label the side pieces right and left, so that whenever I cut them out, I don't get them mixed into each other, since both of them are no longer the same size. Now this is what it looks like after cutting out my pattern, and I'm just going to use this to cut out my fabric as well. So now after doing this, we are going over to the back piece. Now for the back piece, this is the wrong side of the pattern, and I'm just going to pin this zip allowance off, and I'm going to turn it to the right side of the pattern. Now that I've flipped this to the right side of the pattern, you are going to imagine this to be the right side of your fabric. Now this is the back piece, and it's going to be opposite direction of the front piece that we just finished modifying, like this. As you can see right now, I'm just going to make this clearer by putting, like, imagine this is a fabric and putting the right side to each other. You now know that this right side will fall at the back side this way, while the left side will fall on the other side. So I'm just going to keep my front piece aside, and we'll continue the modification. Now you're going to measure 3.5 inches from the center back and mark it right there. And the next thing is to create the shoulders loop, which I'm going to measure down at the armhole area, 3/4 of an inch right there, and I'm going to mark it right there, and I'm going to create the shoulders loop with that measurement. Now after doing that, the next thing I'm going to be working on is the left side of the back piece, and I'm just going to measure from this shoulder area down 3.5 inches, and I'm going to mark it right there. And after marking this, the next thing I'm going to do now, after marking this point, is to mark on the center back the depth of the neckline. I'm going to be using 2.5 inches, but also know that you are at liberty to decide the shape of the back of your dress or your blouse. You can make a deep V-neck, you can make a round neck, any length you want. You can just adopt it at this area. Now after curving in the neckline area for the back piece, I'm going to cut this out and show you the last modification to make. Now at the left side, as you can see right there, the next thing I'm going to do is to mark 1/2 inch from this armhole area in, and I'm going to mark it into my pattern like this, smoothly connected to the armhole of the left side, and I'm going to cut this off, and the back piece pattern is ready. So I'm just going to use this to cut out my fabric, and I'm going to show you also how to cut the sleeve areas as well. So I started off with the sleeve that will be sitting at the right side of the bodice, and it's cut on fold, and it's about 3.5 inches long, including the interface allowance. So from this upper part right here, I'm going to measure 4 inches right there, and then at the lower part right here, I'm just going to measure 4.5 inches. Then I'm going to connect both marks that I've made like this. I'm just going to connect them to each other to form the sleeve that will be sitting at the right side of the bodice. Then I'm going to cut it out from this mark I've made right there, as you can see. After cutting this out, on the screen is the inscription on how I measure down from the shoulder area to sew in my sleeves. Now I'm going to be creating the sleeve that will be sitting at the left side of the bodice, and as you can see, it's actually an off-shoulder sleeve that will be sitting there. So the first thing I'm going to do is to measure the length of the sleeve that I want to make, and as I did before, I'm going to be measuring 3.5 inches length. From this midpoint right here, I'm going to measure 4.5 inches at this upper part right here, and also at this side as well. Then also, after measuring this, the next thing I'm going to do at the lower part right here, I'm going to add 1 inch to this measurement, and I'm going to connect it to each other. From both sleeves that we've made so far, you will notice that the measurements we used are different from each other. This is because one side of the bodice has shoulder while the other one is an off-shoulder bodice. Then we are further going to modify these sleeves in order to balance well at the off-shoulder side of the bodice. So this side will sit at the front while this will be at the back. Now I'm going to further modify the one that will be sitting at the back so that I will create balance for this sleeve. Then from there, I'm going to be adding 1 inch from this point up. I'm going to extend it by 1 inch up, and I'm going to connect it to each other. So after I made that extension right there, as you can see, I'm just going to connect it from this side to this point, and then I'm going to cut this out, and making the left sleeves is ready and over. So guys, this is the pattern that I used for making this top. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial on pattern modification and alterations. Let me know what you think on the comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and also give this video a big thumbs up. And if you want to share your own pattern experience, please join us at Sewing Bee Naija on Facebook. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys in my next tutorial. Bye.